I'm Alex.
And I'm Aria.
Join us on the latest from Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today, we are diving deep into a subject that is, well, completely redefining the operational tempo across Eastern Europe. We're talking about the military's radical embrace of civilian 5G infrastructure.
The stakes, Alex, really couldn't be higher. We are talking about NATO and its allies, critically Ukraine and the Baltics, who are facing numerically superior adversaries. This shift to 5G, it offers revolutionary capabilities. We're talking low latency, huge bandwidth, and support for massive IoT deployments. These are all essential for the AI-driven defense platforms that modern forces are trying to adopt.
Absolutely. The technological promise is just staggering, but it comes with a tremendous strategic risk. So today, we're confronting the core disagreement at the heart of modern battlefield digitization. The question is this: does integrating the commercial 5G ecosystem, using public cell towers and common satellite links, provide a decisive military advantage, especially for finding and targeting Russia's advanced mobile air defenses?
Or does it create an unacceptable, vulnerable central point of failure, one that's just ripe for exploitation by Russia's, frankly, formidable electronic warfare and cyber forces?
I'm going to argue that it's a vital advantage.
And I'll be arguing that it's an unacceptable risk. I maintain that this reliance on commercial infrastructure just vastly expands the military's attack surface. It introduces fundamental security weaknesses that are, I think, structurally difficult, maybe even impossible to mitigate in a high-intensity conflict zone. Russia is specifically equipped both doctrinally and technologically to achieve information dominance by targeting these exact civilian networks.
I see the vulnerability, I do, but I contend that this commercial 5G integration is absolutely vital. It delivers a necessary, time-sensitive advantage that is crucial for suppressing enemy air defenses, and that is the single most important task for surviving a rapid, high-intensity invasion in places like Latvia or Estonia. We just don't have the time to wait for the next generation of military-only, hardened networks. Position statements. Look, the strategic reality is this: nations in harm's way must defeat a rapid invasion, a fait accompli, before major NATO reinforcements can even arrive. That requires the rapid neutralization of mobile surface-to-air missile threats. We're talking the SA-15s, the SA-17s, the upgraded S-300V systems. If we can't strike those systems quickly, our non-stealthy air power stays on the ground, totally ineffective. The 5G ecosystem provides the high-speed data backbone for the crucial operational concept we need to solve this problem, which is time difference of arrival, or TDOA targeting.
That's a compelling argument, but TDOA needs an infrastructure that is robust and secure, not something that's cheap and easily compromised.
But it's both cheap and capable. We're leveraging commercial, off-the-shelf, COTS software-defined radios. These cost maybe $16,000 per unit, and they can be mounted discreetly on existing civilian cell towers. Take Latvia, for example. It has over 5,000 towers. This density lets us create these thick, overlapping kill zones along likely invasion routes. These ground-based networks use the tower's height, its power, and its high-speed backhaul connections, that's the 5G data link, to detect and precisely locate enemy SAM radars. And the key metric here is accuracy. An estimated target location error, or TLE, of 11 meters or better across over 95% of the area. That 11-meter precision means we can use systems like GMLRS to destroy the mobile radar before the crew even knows it's been spotted. This use of commercial protocols allows for the rapid deployment that's so necessary, which is a key lesson we've all learned from Ukraine's wartime adaptations.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the operational speed justifies this kind of exposure. Let me tell you why. The reliance on civilian architecture fundamentally compromises what we call the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Russian doctrine, which is centered on information dominance, fields dedicated electronic warfare brigades. They have systems like Lear-3, which is designed specifically to target and disrupt cellular networks, and Murmansk-BN, which targets high-frequency communication systems. And even the supposed security savior of 5G network slicing introduces crippling complexity. This whole virtualization layer, which is meant to isolate traffic, actually creates new architectural vulnerabilities in orchestration and interslice communication.
But those are highly specific, often theoretical cyber vulnerabilities. They can be mitigated through rigorous protocol hardening.
Mitigation it's academic when the foundation itself is kinetically fragile. Commercial towers and fiber optics, they rely on continuous power. That is the most easily targetable component of the entire system. We saw this vulnerability starkly in Ukraine, where targeted attacks on the power supply disabled between a quarter and well over half of the mobile network in single strikes. A core military function, the defeat of enemy air defenses, it just cannot rely on an infrastructure that is that easily disabled. And furthermore, your TDOA system, while accurate, demands immense centralized computational power for processing things like frequency-hopping radar signals. If the adversary locates and targets that single processing node, or even just the fiber links leading to it, the entire ability to locate and kill those SAMs just collapses instantly.
Okay, let's focus on that core capability because the technology is fundamentally sound. The viability of TDOA targeting against these mobile threats is, well, it's proven. Modern COT software-defined radios can collect signals across a very wide bandwidth. We're talking up to 100 megahertz of instantaneous bandwidth. Now, why does that matter? It means they can detect and process sophisticated Russian radar modes, including frequency hopping, that operate across the 2 to 10 gigahertz bands. And that conveniently overlaps with NATO's own 5G frequencies. The location calculation can be completed incredibly quickly, potentially in, say, 1 to 5 seconds, depending on the signal's complexity. That is rapid targeting against a large, slow-moving vehicle.
5 seconds is the difference between a successful strike and a failed mission. And I think 5 seconds may be too long. While it's true that SAMs like the SA-17s and S-300Vs take at least 5 minutes to stow the radar and start moving after a handoff, your system depends on a strong, predictable emission. What happens when they shift to a highly agile, low probability of intercept, or LPI mode? For instance, if a quiet radar is just communicating via a narrow 2 megahertz L-band channel, the required TDOA center data rate skyrockets. That pushes the processing time potentially past 10 seconds.
Right, that's an interesting point on LPI, though I would argue the inherent density of the network overcomes that latency challenge. TDOA precision is vastly enhanced when the receivers surround the emitter. We're not talking about 3 remote towers here. We're talking about over 575 towers just along major transit corridors in a country like Latvia. This extreme geometric precision allows us to maintain that vital 11-meter TLE even when the signal is weak. And what's more, the personnel element is a force multiplier here. We need forward operating teams managing these SDRs, and they should be indigenous, host nation teams. Troops operating in their own country know the local terrain, the culture, potential partisan networks. This deep local knowledge enhances security and operational uptime far better than any external forces could possibly manage.
That indigenous knowledge is valuable, sure, but it's a tactical game that doesn't solve a strategic vulnerability. That fragility brings us directly to the question of resilience, which is my second point. You mentioned network slicing as a resilience feature. I argue that this technology, which relies heavily on network function virtualization, NFV, it actually makes the system more cyber vulnerable, not less. The complexity of orchestrating virtual slices, managing thousands of nodes, and ensuring interslice communication integrity is just a massive target for state-level cyber exploitation.
I disagree. I disagree fundamentally with framing resilience purely through the lens of internal architectural vulnerabilities. True resilience comes from redundancy and external agility, particularly from leveraging non-terrestrial networks, or NTNs.
And that external resilience relying on commercial satellite communication, SATCOM, is demonstrably fragile. Russia doesn't need to hack Starlink, they just need to jam it. I mean, consider the force required. Disrupting all the uplink bands on the 4 wideband global SATCOM, WGS satellites that are visible to the Baltics would require a manageable force of maybe 80 medium-sized Russian jammers targeting the X-band. Russia is focused on electronic attack, and its capabilities are robust. A handful of focused, high-power jamming operations could instantly render your primary backup communications completely moot.
That's an oversimplification of how modern resilience works. Resilience is achieved through contractual and technological agility, and that's a lesson that's been proven repeatedly by Ukraine. NATO can establish agreements with commercial managed service providers to rapidly shift high-priority users among different satellite systems. We've seen low Earth orbit constellations like Starlink quickly adapt to highly sophisticated Russian cyber attacks, with simple software changes pushed globally in a matter of hours. That is an agility military systems often lack. The convergence of terrestrial 5G and NTN provides essential backup to restore communications to damaged edge networks. When fiber was cut in Ukrainian conflict zones, Starlink was the critical link used to reconnect damaged cellular systems to core networks. It kept both civilian and military communications functioning.
That dual-layered commercial approach provides a level of recovery speed that a purely military system just cannot match.
That dependence on commercial providers, though, leads us directly to the most worrying issue, my third point. Leveraging civilian technology versus strict military requirements. Your entire premise is built on leveraging commercial investments, software-defined networking, network function virtualization, because they're an order of magnitude faster than current tactical networks. The big idea here is to enlist the entire civilian wireless ecosystem, everything from smart transportation sensors to surveillance cameras and smart drones, to feed time and location stamped data to AI algorithms for real-time situational awareness. You're trying to reconcile mass and technology.
And why shouldn't we? This COTS approach allows for mass production and rapid deployment. It gives us the scale and depth of sensing required to combat a numerically superior invasion force affordably and effectively. I mean, the sheer volume of data streams provides the redundancy and coverage that specialized military sensors can't afford to match.
Because COTS equipment is optimized for commercial stability and profitability, not contested operating conditions. It fundamentally lacks military-specific requirements for hardening, for security, and for resilience against interference. Russian military experts themselves have explicitly noted that and I'm quoting here, direct use of civilian mobile technologies is impossible in combat conditions. They said it requires complex, expensive, specialized systems that are protected from interference. You are relying on hardware that was never intended to operate under heavy jamming or kinetic attack.
But we mitigate that risk by integrating COTS capability with military security procedures, not by rejecting the capability outright.
But this introduces a massive political risk that no amount of military procedure can solve. The long-term dependence on commercial partners is just fraught with instability. Media reports have already surfaced suggesting that commercial LEO providers might be backing away from supporting kinetic warfighting uses, or even shaping coverage to exclude conflict areas entirely based on corporate policy or government pressure. This means that an allied military operation in the Baltics could suddenly find its core communications severed not by a Russian jammer, but by a CEO in Silicon Valley. That reliance makes long-term military dependence an incredibly high-stakes vulnerability. The sheer speed of 5G cannot compensate for the lack of inherent military-grade control and security assurance.
But that is a risk we must take if the alternative is waiting years for a perfect, secure, military-only system while a rapid invasion looms. We mitigate the political risk through contractual agreements, and by integrating that commercial speed and scale with specific, trusted military procedures, like using those indigenous teams. This hybrid solution is the only path to achieving the necessary speed and depth of situational awareness required to defeat a rapid advance in the time window we actually have available. We are choosing operational victory over theoretical perfection. Ultimately, the evidence suggests the rapid, precise TDOA targeting capability enabled by commercial 5G towers and the high-speed data backbone of the ecosystem offers a true asymmetric advantage. This advantage is critical for suppressing mobile SAMs, countering a rapid invasion, and, well, preserving NATO air power sorties. The benefits, I believe, outweigh the inherent risks if the strategy is fused successfully with local, resilient, forward-operating teams who can leverage their specialized knowledge of the ground.
I remain deeply skeptical that the speed gains offered by civilian infrastructure justify the profound expansion of the attack surface. The reliance on commercial-grade hardware and software in critical warfighting roles creates deep, exploitable vulnerabilities that Russian electronic warfare and cyber forces are trained to leverage. While 5G is transformative, the system must prioritize military-grade security, control, and absolute isolation of critical functions rather than depending on infrastructure that is inherently fragile and, frankly, politically unreliable in a high-intensity conflict zone.
The goal, as we've seen in real time in Eastern Europe, is to achieve technological mastery and speed of execution.
And that mastery requires recognizing and managing complexity, not importing commercial fragility into the warfighting domain.
Indeed. The discussion today highlights that the future of defense rests not just on adopting the latest commercial technology, but on mastering the tension between civilian technological speed and the military necessity for hardened, secure, and resilient networks in the electromagnetic spectrum. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Arya, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.